Shalom, everybody. This is Netanel Elyashiv broadcasting to you from Eli, Israel, with our dosage of vitamin K. That's Rav Kook, a bit of Rav Kook in English. We've been studying Rav Kook's letters to Dov Ber Milstein, a noble Chassid from Poland, whose 2 out of 3 sons, they were straying away from their religious lifestyle, from Judaism, actually. And we're on lesson 5 here, called The Effect of the Current of Time. We said that these letters from Rav Kook, they might be dealing specifically with these 2 individuals and with this family, the Milstein family, but actually it's all of our families. It's the story of Klal Yisrael. It's the story of the secularization of the majority of our people, and how to deal with this. So last time we spoke about the importance of being critical, and even if you're adopting certain values from the external world, values that come that don't originate in Torah, you should understand that they are also connected to Torah, and 2, you should be critical because, like Rav Kook said, maybe the foundation of these movements and belief systems, the foundation might be good, and that's why you're attracted to these movements. But there's also a lot of rubbish, our British friends would say, garbage in the American term, that comes with it, and you shouldn't swallow the whole thing. And the way to differentiate between the good and the bad is to be connected to your own identity. And if you're Jewish, then you're a Jew. That's your identity. So be connected to your people, be connected to your Torah. And from there, from that stance, from that confident pose in life, implement these values into your identity in a correct way, and then you'll get the best of all worlds. And that was his message for the children, and his message for the father was to acknowledge that there's something true and something positive in his son's inclination. Of course, not the straying away part, but what they're seeking is based on truth. It's based on ideals and values that are connected to our Torah. Maybe we have to learn our Torah in a deeper way and understand that it includes these values. Maybe we didn't emphasize them enough, and that's why they're looking for them, seeking them in other places instead of finding them in the Tanakh, in the Talmud, in the Emunah, in our value system. Okay, so that's basically what we were discussing last time. And we said that these letters are like a babushka, a matryoshka, meaning each time Rav Kook, he writes more, and we discovered that there was more to what he was saying. And that's what's going to happen today. We're now with Igeret Kuf Lamed Chet, letter 138. This is according to the sequence of letters in Igrot HaRaya, Rav Kook's published letters. There are many more letters that haven't been published yet, but this is from the first volume of his letters published in Hebrew. Be'ezrat Hashem Yir HaKodesh Yafo Tibaneh V'Tichonen. We have the date here, the 19th of Iyar in 1908, and that was a mere 3 months since the previous letter. Not much has been going on since the previous letter. Not a lot of time has passed, but Rav Kook got Milstein's letter back, and he says, Shalom uvracha mikodesh lichvod yedidi, to my honored and friend and beloved, the distinguished rabbi in Torah and true fear of God, our teacher and rabbi, Moreinu v'Rabbeinu, Rabbi Dov Ber Milstein, may he live long. True, this is also partially politeness to open a letter so warmly, but it's not only politeness. He didn't write this way to everybody. He definitely had a lot of respect to Dov Ber Milstein and a lot of empathy for his situation. And anybody who's hearing this, listening to this, or watching it on YouTube, you should have the source sheet. The source sheet is always in the YouTube. We put it in the comment. You will have a link to the source sheet. It's difficult to follow this especially the bilingual version of this series without having a source sheet. So, says Rav Kook, it has been many days since, to my heart's joy, I received your letter, sir. Sir is a good example for you can't translate Kvod Torato. I would say what it means, but you can't translate it. So I gave us sir, Kvod Torato. I was happy to see your precious words, dear to me like those of loyal friends. But I was also very saddened by my friend's sorrow concerning his children. Rav Kook says, I feel for you. And like we said, this is the first thing that we should learn from these letters, to feel for somebody else's situation. The fact that you happen to have a wonderful theory about what's going on with his kids and why it's happening doesn't mean that you shouldn't first and foremost feel for his sorrow and for his pain. We explained that in previous shiurim, that for somebody who's a real Yerei Shamayim, like Dover Milstein was, if your children stray away from Judaism, that's not a small thing, or like you're just saying, all right, that's their decision, I'll respect it. It's the very essence of your life is to have children and grandchildren who continue in the way of Yiddishkeit. They might do it in a bit different way, but not children who leave the mitzvot and possibly leaving even the Jewish nation. This is and should be very rough for Milstein. So Rav Kook says, I feel for you, I feel your pain, I was saddened. For a long time I've been wanting to write to him, to him and not to you, is like the way in Hebrew you would, it's like rabbinic language, and in respect you speak to somebody that way. But I've been waiting to write to him, means writing to you as requested, but my preoccupations have prevented me until now, when I'm finally able to write a little. This is indeed a little, because he's going to forget something important in this letter that he's going to tell us, he's going to reveal in the next letter. Ken Yedidi, yes, my friend, I understand your heartache greatly. But if you think, sir, now we're getting back to the main topic here, how to deal with people, with children straying away. These aren't little children, these are maybe teenagers or young adults straying away from observance of Torah and mitzvot. If you think, sir, like the majority of Torah students, and here Rav Kook is testifying that that's what the majority thought in 1908. Today things are different. That it is proper in this time to abandon those children who have strayed away from the ways of Torah and faith due to the stormy, let me make a correction here. Yes. Due to the stormy current of the times, I say with full conviction that this is not the path that Hashem desires. Meaning, most people thought that if your children are straying away, you should also stray away from them. And they thought that might be a correction to the situation. But no, this isn't the way. This isn't the way to go at all. This is called abandoning and neglecting your children. And here Rav Kook opens the window to a new explanation. He mentions the stormy current of the times. This is hence the topic of this shiur, the effect of the current of time, or current of the times. Meaning, what he's going to say here is that you can't judge people individually without understanding that they are influenced deeply by the generation they're living in. Meaning, this story of these two Milstein kids isn't unique. It's part of the fabric of the Jewish nation in the beginning of the 20th century. And they are growing up in a certain time, and that time has a current. It's a bit similar to what they call zeitgeist. I probably didn't pronounce that correctly. Meaning every time, it has its trend. And it's not only a trend in fashion or in music. It's much deeper than that. It's the way people look at life. It's what's going on in the world. And you can't expect your children to just swim against that current. What do I mean by this? Of course, lichatchila, your first strategy should be educating your children not to be dependent on the current of time. Your first strategy in chinuch your plan A should be to teach people to be devoted to eternal values which don't change over time, and to be a hero, to stand in front of the current of time. That's plan A. But plan A failed. And we're here now. The question is if we have a plan B. It's always the biggest military failures and other failures in life is when people had a plan A but they didn't have a plan B. You might be reminded of October 7th in Israel. We had a very good defense plan. We just didn't have a plan B. And the first thing you learn about defense and military strategy is that we say in Hebrew, Kav ha'agana le'olam yiparetz, meaning your line of defense will always be breached. And there's a logic to this. It's not just some kind of a rule of thumb. The logic is that your enemy knows about your plan A. He knows about your first line of defense. And he's not stupid. You should never underestimate your enemies. And if they attack, that means that they're attacking after they have a plan of how to deal with your first line of defense. And therefore, you should always invest much in your second line of defense. This happened to the French in the beginning of World War II when they put all of their tokens, all of their credit on, in Hebrew it's called Kav Majinu, the Majinu line. They had a whole long, expensive line of fortifications, and they planned to keep the Germans out, but the Germans just managed to come from the area of Belgium. We're not going to get into all of this. What I'm trying to say is that you should be prepared with a plan B, and Rav Kook is giving us the plan B. Of course, it's better to educate people to be strong enough to deal with the current of time, but you can't expect most of people can't do that, because if most people could go against the current of time, it wouldn't be called the current of time. There's something very, very strong in the way that the culture and belief systems and values of a certain generation are created. And if you grow up in that time and in that culture, then at least statistically, you're going to be influenced by that. And therefore, he says, he mentions the stormy current of the times, and he says, if you think you should abandon your children, then I say with full conviction that this is not the path that Hashem desires. These kids aren't only your own kids, they're also Hashem's kids. They're the future of Klal Yisrael. And we have responsibility, affection for these kids, but also responsibility for the future of Am Yisrael. We got to work with everybody where they are and help them make even one step in the right direction. Even if they're not going to be the Hasidim that their father believed and hoped that they would be. But, keeping them as a part of the Jewish nation, that's the strategy here. That's the plan B. And now we're going to speak a bit about the halachot of Eidut, because Rav Kook is going to give us a bit of a halachic pilpul here, and we have to understand these Gemarot and Tosfot that he's going to bring us in the next paragraph. And Eidut is to testifying, to be a witness. To be a witness in the halacha, that's a very serious thing. It's more serious than being a witness at a regular trial, because a witness at a trial is no better than a video, meaning he's just saying what he saw. But but in halakha, a witness, he's part of the story. Meaning, let's say a wedding. I sometimes officiate at weddings. So at a wedding, you need the chatan and kala. But you should have a rabbi there, but you don't have to have a rabbi. A rabbi is just to be sure that you're doing it correctly. But you don't have to have a rabbi at a Jewish wedding. It's highly advised to have one, but it's not an essential part of the, I was about to say ceremony, but a wedding in halakha is not a ceremony. It's much more than that. It's a change of status. It's not just something something external. Life is changing. The personal status of people is changing before our eyes. And to do that, it's not enough to have a chatan, a kala, and let's say a video proving that the chatan gave her the ring and said hared mekudeshetli, and she accepted it. You can see that on a video, but that's not enough. You need two kosher witnesses. And like I said, these witnesses, they have to be male. I'm not going to get into that. I don't even know how to explain that. But according to the Torah, they have to be male. They have to be over bar mitzvah, and they have to be Torah observant. If not, then they're disqualified to be witnesses. This is very important because sometimes at weddings, the chatan thinks that the edim, the witnesses, should be his best friends. And that's not really the criteria. We're not looking for your best friends, guy. We're looking for Torah observant Jews. They have to be serious. If you have best friends who happen to be serious in their Torah life, then that's wonderful. But that's not what we're looking for friendship. We're looking for people who can fulfill this important role. And Rav Soloveitchik, he has this wonderful book, Al Tshuva, based on shiurim he used to give in memory of his father, I think, before Yom Kippur. And they have this in English, repentance. How is it called? Al Tshuva. Let me check how it's called so I can, you probably know this book. Al Tshuva, Anglit, Rav Soloveitchik. Not halachak, man. Come on, guys. Wait a minute. I'm getting drawn into this. This isn't so important. I just wanted to mention a paragraph from one of those books. But since I did mention it, and I probably... Come on. Yeah, I said it correct. I didn't pronounce it well enough. Repentance. Okay, so there's this book, Al Tshuva, and in it, Rav Soloveitchik explains to us why somebody might lose his status to be a witness. And he says the following: a Jew who commits a transgression undergoes a change in his legal status. If a person commits a transgression in Aveira that carries the punishment of flogging or the death penalty by a court, Malkot or Mitat Beit Din, meaning even if he doesn't get, because we don't use that in our times, flogging or death penalty, but if he committed an Aveira that would be worthy of flogging or the death penalty according to the strict Torah law, then in addition to the punishment due to him as a result of the sin, he is also disqualified from giving testimony. He can't be a witness, not at a Jewish wedding or any Jewish procedure. This does not come about because of punishment. It's not like we're saying we're punishing you not only with the death penalty, but meanwhile we're not going to allow you to be a witness either. It's not a punishment. It's a change in his personal status. The person after the sin is not the same person he was before the sin. Every person has a presumption of trustworthiness. We would call that chizkat kashrut, meaning to be a kosher witness, you don't have to prove anything. Everybody, we should our basic treatment of our fellow Jew is to trust him. And an individual truth, I would say, natural, which is an integral part of his personality. The moment a person sins, he becomes flawed, corrupted, defiled. He falls from his status. Sin deprives him of his natural rights, of his human qualities. Meaning, after a serious avera, after a serious sin, you're no longer the person you used to be. You have changed. The sin changes you, and it downgrades you. You're like a lower version of a human being. Yeah, that bad. He changes completely. One personality departs, and another takes its place. This is not a matter of punishment or fine, nor is it anger, wrath, or revenge. It is a metaphysical flaw in his personality, in the holiness of the person. Meaning the sin craves like some kind of a hole in who you are. And your neshama is still holy, but you have something essential missing from your personality, and we can no longer regard you as a kosher witness. Why have we studied all of this? To understand, Rav Kook brings us two sources that we have to understand. They're both from the Tosfot. Rav Tzvi Yehuda Kook used to mention that the Tosfot, specifically the commentators of the Talmud, they have a very special capability of psychological perception. You can often see this in the Tosfot, more in other Rishonim. And here's an example. You know, they use just a select small amount of words, but in those words you can see a deep understanding of human nature. So the first Tosfot he mentions is the Tosfot in Sanhedrin, Kafvav Amud Bet. And what does it say there? Let's go. Should we? All right, we're going to read Rav Kook, and then we're not going to understand it unless we know these two sources. But we're going to learn the sources after we read the paragraph. So Rav Kook says, just as the Tosfot wrote in Sanhedrin 26, Dibura Madchil, the suspected, that there is reason to say that one suspected of sexual impropriety, he did something impropriety, should not be disqualified from giving testimony because he is considered like one under coercion, since his inclination overpowers him. And similarly, the Tosfot wrote in Gittin 41, Dibur Madchil, we force, kofinoto, that since the maidservant entices them to sin, they are considered coerced. So it is, okay, so he just mentioned that sometimes we're not going to fully blame a person for his deeds, though he did them in free will, out of free will, and yet we say there's a certain element here of coercion. This person couldn't have really chosen to do otherwise, at least like we said, statistically. 95 out of 100 people can't choose to do something else. So we're going to get into those examples, but let's finish this passage from the letter, from the Igeret. So it is with the evil maidservant. In Hebrew it says shivcha bisha, which is actually Aramaic. Bisha is bad, the bad maidservant. This is a quotation from the Zohar. That's why it's a bit difficult to understand what he's talking about. Rav Tzvi Yehuda, in his comments on the Igeret, he says it's taken from Tikunei Hazor. I tried to look it up, but there are a few mentions of an evil maidservant there, and since I'm not a Kabbalist, I wouldn't know exactly which one he meant. If you happen to meet Rav Bitzala Naor, ask him, he'll probably know. So, anyways, there is an evil maidservant, the Shivcha Bisha, of the current of our time. Again, he mentions the current of our time. By the way, Rav Kook almost never mentions the current of the time, Zerem Hazman, in his other writings. It's mainly in this letter. Here it's mentioned 3 times. In all of his writings, it's only mentioned another 2 times. So it's like this is the letter in which he explains the influence, the effect of the current of time. So the current of time is considered here the Shivcha Bisha, the evil maidservant who was given dominion. No, it's not like all the current of our time is the evil maidservant. The evil maidservant of the current of our time. Meaning in our time, in every time there's the bad and the good. The bad in our time was given dominion from heaven before she completely perishes and vanishes like smoke. Meaning we're at the end game of history, at least in a way. We're approaching in quick strides. Historically, these are quick strides. We're approaching the Geula, and in the Geula, the evil will be destroyed, or at least substantially weakened, and therefore she was given dominion from heaven before she completely perishes and vanishes like smoke. She entices our young children with all her many sorceries to go astray after her. Who? This evil maidservant of the current of our time. They are completely coerced, and God forbid, I'm just correcting another thing here. And God forbid that we should judge coercion as if it was free will. Look, this word coercion isn't very good. In Hebrew, it's better. It's called ones. You have a mezid, you have a shogeg, and you have an anus. Let me explain. If you see a kid that you, God forbid, hate so much as to want to murder him, and you chase him down with your car and run him over and kill him, that's murder. That's called being a mazid, right? That's first degree murder. But maybe you were driving and you had no intention of hitting this child. On the contrary, you're going to take it terribly for the rest of your life. And yet you were a bit to blame because you weren't driving carefully enough. You were driving over the speed limit, or maybe you were playing with your cell phone or not concentrated enough. And therefore, you, again, God forbid, but you hit a child and he perished because of this. This is an accident. And yet we hold you partially responsible because, of course, you didn't mean for this to happen and you would do everything to change it if you could. And yet you're a bit to blame because you weren't driving carefully enough, right? That's called shogeg. These, according to Torah, remember, the person he's called rotzeach b'shogeg, by the way. He's called a shogeg murderer. The Torah uses that harsh word, retzach, regarding somebody who mistakenly hurt somebody else out of carelessness. And we should take this to our attention, especially when driving and in other situations in life, always to be on the careful side. But maybe you were driving according to the speed limit and you were concentrated and you were doing everything you should as you were even driving defensively. And yet there were other cars parking on the right side of the road, and a boy was playing with his ball, and the ball happened to roll into the road, and the boy chased the ball and suddenly popped out from between two cars, and it's not like you ran into him, he ran into you. So a person who finds himself in this terrible situation, of course this is also a very sad thing if it happens to you, but it happened to you. You didn't do this. You're not considered a rotzeach b'shogeg. You don't have to go to an ir miklat, and nobody can hold you to blame or responsible for what happened. Maybe we would mention the sentence megalgalin chova al yedei chayav. Maybe we would say you still have to have some kind of tshuva because this did happen to you. Why did it happen to you? But I'm not sure that we'll even say that. And if we say that, that's the worst we'll say. Meaning we're not going to hold you responsible or to blame for what happened. That's called anus. You didn't really have a choice. It was the mistake made by the child. Of course, we're not blaming him either. This is a tragedy where there's nobody to blame. We often look for somebody to blame. Not always is there somebody to blame. And this is a case in which there's nobody to blame. Okay, so that's called anus. And this is what Rav Kook is saying. He said, your children, you shouldn't, it's true that we do have some harsh halachot regarding people who don't observe the mitzvot. But that's if they choose to do that. And what he's saying here is basically, in this time, in the world we live in the time we live in, your kids didn't really have a choice. It was as if they were forced to choose this path. Now, what do you mean? I mean, they could have done otherwise. I mean, like Rav Kook also had a son, Tzvi Yehuda, who became a rabbi and a talmid of his father. So he was also in the same time, and he chose other. But like we said, it's statistical. And it's just like these two examples that he gave from the Tosfot, in which men did have free will, and yet we're treating them as if they're anusim. Now, the variety of human behavior and the whole question about our free will, and on the other side, those who think that everything is determined. So there's a really wide range. So when Rav Kook says that these people, these kids were anusim, they didn't have a choice, it's not as if they didn't have a choice at all. It's not the extreme of somebody who is anus. But we're treating him morally as if he was anus. Because it's like we said, you have to be very, very strong to stand against this current. And we can't blame somebody for not being very, very strong. We can praise those who do manage to maintain their strength in this situation. But we're not going to say that the 95% who go with the current, we're not going to say that they're evil people. No, the current took them to there. So this is pretty much the balance. It's a very delicate balance. And but Rav Kook, he doesn't speak about it delicately here. Rather, he says they're completely coerced. In Hebrew, he says, "Hem anusim gmurim." They couldn't have chosen otherwise. V'chalila lanu ladun ones keratzon. God forbid that we should judge people who had no choice, as if they just had, out of their own free will, decided to do these bad things. So, what are these two Tosfot commentaries that we're speaking about? The first example is taken from the Gemara in Sanhedrin. And there Rav Nachman says, HaChashud al ha'arayot kasher le'edut. Meaning, if somebody, though we suspect that he might have been engaging in forbidden sexual relations, that's a bad averah, that ruins the fabric of society and family. And yet, Rav Nachman says that's not enough to disqualify somebody to be a witness. Because Rav Nachman doesn't explain the way Rav Soloveitchik explains it, meaning that like you just become a lower person. Rav Nachman explains it a bit more rationally, we might say. And he says that the reason we disqualify somebody from being a witness is if he can be bought. So therefore, only an ed, which is an ed chamas, meaning somebody who is willing to lie for monetary reasons, to gain money or to not lose money, that's the person we're looking for to disqualify as a witness. But the fact that somebody did some other avera, which might be worse, but that doesn't mean we can't believe him. We can't believe his testimony. Rav Sheshet doesn't accept this. And he says, Ani mare, answer me my aster. Arba'in bekitfei v'kasher. How can you say, Rav Sheshet is speaking more like Rav Soloveitchik. He says, somebody who is engaged in this kind of avera between a man and a woman, he receives 40 lashes on his shoulders, meaning it's onesh malkot. And you say that he's fit to bear witness? How can it be? Meaning that, so this is a machloket, right? Rav Nachman says only somebody who messed up morally in something that's financial, he will be disqualified to be a witness. But Rav Sheshet said anybody who does an avera that might cause him to be punished with malkot or mitat bedin, anybody who does such an avera, he can't be a witness either, okay? And that's the Gemara. And then the Tosfot, they are dealing with Rav Nachman's svara, his idea. And he said that a chashud al arayot kasher le'edut. He who is suspected to be to do an avera, a sexual oriented avera, he can still be a witness. And he says, Tema, how can this be? He asks, it's puzzling. How is this different from someone who eats non-kosher meat out of desire? Or someone who engages in a worse avera, I'm not going to get into that, that they are psulim le'edut. Meaning we already have two examples of somebody that we can't allow him to be a witness. Somebody who ate nevela, non-kosher meat, and he did it out of his desire. So again, this isn't something that's monetary. It's something moral. It's against the religion, the Torah, and mitzvot. And yet we see that he's disqualified from giving testimony. So according to this logic, and we didn't hear Rav Nachman protest this. If Rav Nachman would say, Ochel neverot leteavon and ploni revani leretzoni, they're also qualified to be a witness. Then he's consistent. But he only said it regarding these averot, an avera, sexual avera between a man and a woman. And how does this work with these other two examples? And then the Tosfot, he gives two answers. The first one I'm not going to get into. The second one, which is the one who is relevant here, Inami, he says, Hacha mishum liyitzro tokpo. Here it is because his yetzer, his inclination, overpowers him. And it's not like non-kosher meat or a bestiality, because those do not have an inclination that overpowers them as much as immorality. It's a bit difficult because the translation here, they're trying to use delicate words to describe these averot, which is basically a good thing. But what he's basically saying is that the Yetzer Hara to commit an avera sexually orientated is very, very strong. How do we know this? Well, 50% of the population know this, meaning men, they know this from themselves. Of course, Baruch Hashem, we try our best to be good, but we know that this is a very, very strong inclination. Every healthy man knows that this is it's difficult to overcome. And of course, every avera is because of Yetzer Hara. And yet, it's not the same. It's not the same. You can eat kosher. You can excuse me for putting it this way. You can eat like a chazir kosher food, meaning you can eat in a non-moral way, but it can still be kosher. You don't have to have the non-kosher kosher food. And if you chose to have dafka, the non-kosher food, the nevela, the non-kosher meat, then that's you could have easily not have done that, and you chose to do it. So therefore, you can't be a witness anymore. And the other avera that's mentioned here, again, it's a yetzer. You have an inclination, but it's not as strong as. But this is different than the inclination that causes a man to do stupid things with a woman, and therefore we're not. Of course, you're not allowed to do it, and we will punish you for it. But we won't say that you're not a human being. You know, you didn't lose your qualification to be an ed, to give a testimony. Now, this is educationally, chinuch-wise, it's problematic. I know it's problematic to teach this igeret and these sources because I taught both boys and girls this igeret, and with each of them there's a different problem. With the boys, the problem is it's like legitimization, right? Because you're saying, look, you know, if you don't manage to overcome your inclination, your sexual inclination, then it's not really your fault because your yetzer is very, very strong. This is not a good message for men, and especially for teenagers. We should teach them on the contrary, that gever, we always say, is lashon hidgabrut. You got to be strong. This is gonna build your character to not give in to that inclination. So that's what I said. It's not really anus. You chose to do it, and you could have chose otherwise. And still, it's different from those other averot. So there's a certain balance that we have to keep here. And why is it problematic to teach these sources to women? Because, it's disappointing for them to hear this, and they're also offended by hearing that it's okay that men are act the way they sometimes do, and instead of holding them to a higher level of expectation and so on. But we're studying the Igeret, so we're studying these sources as well, and we have a good educational answers. Like I said, for men we should say, no, okay, what I would say educationally for boys and for girls, I would say for the boys, it's important to hear this, not so they can think that it's okay, but they should understand that it's not only their problem. Because often men, especially teenagers, when they're growing up and they feel the strong inclination of sexual desire, they think that it's only them, because boys don't talk to each other much about their inner world and feelings, and therefore when it hits you, and it hits you so strong, you might often think that it's only you and there's a problem with you, because it can't be that all the other guys in my class are dealing with such a strong inclination. And when you study this Mikorot, you're saying it's okay. The same guy that that's sitting next to you, and he's serious in his davening, and with his tzitzis out of his, a serious guy, he also has the same inclination, and he's dealing with the same thing. It's natural, and it's okay. It doesn't mean that it's okay to sin. It means that it's okay that the inclination is very strong. And therefore, we can understand why there are certain people who don't manage to overcome it. And you shouldn't be one of those people. You should, okay? That's what I would say educationally to boys. And to girls, I would say it's important to understand the world you're living in. You shouldn't be naive, because sometimes because girls are built internally differently than men regarding the whole thing of topic of sexuality, they can often be mistreated or used or manipulated by men. So we don't want the girls thinking that all men have dirty minds and souls and you can't trust anybody. But you don't want them thinking the opposite. Meaning they shouldn't think that the average man is such a low life, but they should understand that he has the capability to be such. That for men, the inclination, the sexual inclination, isn't always connected to love and positive emotions and relationships. It should be, and it can be, but for men it can also be separate. Meaning they can desire somebody only for her body and only for only low reasons. They have that different, women should understand that it is possible, and if more women would understand this, especially in the religious world where they don't speak about these things so often, and I wouldn't speak about these things at all if it wasn't in the Igeret. I'm just saying, if while learning these sources, they understand that this, then, but like I said, it's also this is also a very delicate balance. We shouldn't elaborate about this too much. And like I said, we shouldn't give women the idea that all men are, including their fathers and brothers and rabbis and teachers and all the nice people in the community, they're all low. You understand me, all right. These aren't the topics that I usually speak about, so I'm doing my best to give a good, positive explanation. Anyway, so the second source is a bit even a bit harsher. And the background in Masechet Gittin is about, the Gemara says that if you have a slave, by the way, the whole thing of slavery in the Torah, that's another big topic, but according to Torah, a Canaanite slave is the property of his owner, and you're not allowed to release him, because it says, Le'olam b'hem ta'avodu. How is this a good thing? How is this moral? Or maybe it's immoral, but the Torah had patience, and now Baruch Hashem, we're more sophisticated, and we don't need this whole thing about slavery. Like I said, it's an interesting sugya. But according to basic Torah law, and of course there are a lot of restrictions in the halachot regarding how you treat a slave, but the very fact that in the Torah there is capacity for slavery, and when somebody is a slave, then you're not supposed to release him. But what happens if he's half a slave and half a free man? How can this be possible? It's if it was a slave owned by two partners, and one of them said, "I'm releasing my 50% of the slave." So it's not like he becomes 100% a slave of the other partner. He's 50% free because one partner released him, and the second partner, he's 50% a slave. And this poses a problem because halachically, he can't get married and he can't have children. Why? Because he can't marry a woman enslaved, which is what we usually would suggest for a slave according to original Torah law. And like I said, Baruch Hashem, we're not there. The world has become a better place, hopefully. Well, there's still slavery today, by the way, a bit, but not like it was in the ancient times. And so because half of him is released, he's not allowed to marry an enslaved woman. But because half of him is a slave, he's not allowed to marry a free woman, and so he can't marry anybody. And therefore, the Gemara says that in this case, the second partner also must release him. And regarding this, the Tosfot asks the question, why should he be there's an Isur to release a slave, right? And we have a rule saying, how is it written here? Yeah, this is the Tosfot beginning. They compel his master to make him free. That's what we explained, the Gemara. And the Tosfot asks, do we say to a person, sin so that your fellow may benefit? No. And he gives the example from Masechet Shabbat. This is very interesting. We don't have enough time to get into all the details. But basically, what happens if your friend comes like right after the Shabbat began, and he puts some dough in the oven, and he leaves the room. And of course, he wasn't allowed to do that. But the Isur Deoraita, the big Avera, will only be when this dough becomes, when it's cooked. Cooked meaning baked. Baking is bishul. It's like cooking in halacha, and that's an Isur Deoraita. So what you can do is you can open that oven and take out the dough. You're not allowed to do that, but that's an Isur de Rabbanan. That's a small transgression. If you do that, you're going to save your friend from the Isur Deoraita, because you're going to prevent the Avera from taking place. And the Gemara says in Masechet Shabbat, page 4a, if I remember correctly, that we don't tell somebody to sin, even a small sin, to save his friend from a large sin. Meaning, that's his problem. He put it into the oven. If you can't take the heat, stay out of the kitchen, whatever. He did it. He's going to have to face the consequences. And you shouldn't do an Avera to save him. So the Tosfot say that according to this logic, we should also say, look, true, this servant, half slave, half free man, true, he can't get married, and he can't have children, and there's a mitzvah pru'urvu, but that's his problem, not yours. And you shouldn't release him, and which is an Avera. You shouldn't do that to solve his problem, according to this very same logic. So the Tosfot gives three answers to this question. The first, he's saying, no, we said that in Masechet Shabbat because your friend is to blame for putting that dough in the oven. But the slave, it's not his fault that he's a slave. And it's definitely not his fault that this guy released half of him. So since he wasn't negligent, since it's not his fault at all, then we will tell you to commit a small transgression to enable him to fulfill his mitzvah of Pirya Uviyah and have a family and have children. That's the first answer. And then, no, it's not three answers. That's the answer. Okay? And then he refers to another similar case about a woman who was half servant, half slave, and half a free woman. I'll change this from servant, it says here, to slave. Though it's a harsh word, like we explained, it's not something we're happy with, but there's a difference between a servant and a slave, and a slave regards your legal status. So, concerning a woman who is half a slave and half a free woman, it says in the Gemara that they compel her master to free her. Right. And the Gemara says, how does the Tosfot say in Hebrew? Yeah, so it says a few pages before that in the Gemara that her master must release her. And the reason is Mishum dinahaguba minahag hefker. Meaning that this woman, slave, she was being used by men and for sexual purposes, and therefore he must release her because we can't allow this to keep on going on. And the Tosfot said, but why? The men who are doing this with this woman, they are poshim. They were negligent. You told me that the reason that we release the half slave, half free man is because it's not his fault. He wasn't negligent. It's just, but these men who are doing this Avera with this woman slave, it is their fault. And therefore, we should have said, according to the answer to your kushia, this is a bit difficult, okay? Most of these igrot aren't so complicated. We have to understand the old Gemara and the Tosfot, and I'm not a very good teacher in English for these things. But I hope you managed to follow me. According to the answer that we gave regarding the release of the male servant, in the example of the the woman who is half a slave and half free, we shouldn't have forced her master to release her, because for him it's an avera. And we said we don't have to save somebody. We don't have to do an avera to save people who are negligent. And these men who were doing the avera with this woman, they were negligent. They decided to do it. And then explain the Tosfot. This is the relevant part to our Igeret. He said in that case it was the opposite. She was seeking them out and enticing them to sin. Meaning, in that case, it wasn't that she was being used by them. Rather, she was enticing them, like it says here, to sin. So what? Still, they could have said no. Tosfot said no. No, they are considered to be compelling, not compelling her. They are considered to be compelled by her. Yeah, I understand. No, it was mistranslated. Let me correct this. They are considered to be compelled. And I'm going to write coerced here in the sograim, by her. Meaning, how will I say this in the most clean way? I'll say that the morality of the world is, the morality of our world is upheld by the fact that women don't allow men to do anything that they might want to do. Meaning, Hashem created women with more kedusha, with more tzniut, with they also, of course, have a sexual inclination, but it's much higher and more connected, like we said before. We gave the negative example. With women, it's a positive example. Usually it's connected to relationship and to affection and to love. It's not just a bodily thing. And like we said, it's not like men don't want companionship and love as well. But they have the capacity to tear apart those two things that should go together. There was that song, right? Love and marriage go together like a horse and carriage. So with men, it doesn't have to go. Of course, love was in that song, Love and Marriage, that was from the era where they wouldn't say it specifically, but sexual relations in marriage, that's what the song, I think, is meaning to say. They go together like a horse and carriage. But men are built in a way that it doesn't have to go together. But with women, it usually does. And since a man needs the consent of a woman, so the very fact that the women aren't so enabling, then that causes men it causes the more positive side of the man to come out. But in the case that it's the opposite, meaning the woman is tempting and coercing, not coercing, and tempting the man, say the Tosfot, they didn't really have much of a choice. Because if this woman, she was acting in a way, inviting men to be with her, then what could the men have done? And again, I'll ask, what do you mean, what could they have done? We expect a man to stand up to such a temptation. And even if a woman is volunteering, by the way, in reality, usually that's a misinterpretation of what she really meant. We're not getting into this. But in that case, okay, the Tosfot is speaking of a case where she is inviting people to be with her, to cohabit with her. And again, we would morally demand from men to be better than that and not to give into that. But so like we said, it's not really anus. It's not like they didn't have a choice at all. But it's not a regular choice. Just like we said before with the Avera compared to eating non-kosher food. With eating non-kosher food, you can easily overcome that inclination. And if you didn't, you're really a bad person. You can't be a witness. But since the inclination here is so strong, and if the defense, which is built into the natural psychological structure of women, if that barrier, okay, if that came down and the woman is inviting you, so statistically it's difficult, and we'll call that, the Tos would say, it's like being anus, meaning it's like you didn't really have a choice. Now again, this is very delicate, because of course the Tosfot wouldn't have done that Avera, and their children wouldn't have done it in their communities, and we would expect men to stand before this. And yet we're just saying that the inclination is very, very strong, and therefore we'll take this into account when deciding if you can be a witness or not. Okay, so I hope I explained this well enough. And here we're trying to summarize what Rav Kook said at the beginning of this letter. We're going to continue this letter in the next shiur. What Rav Kook said is that just like there are certain situations in which a woman is tempting a man, and like we said again, I can only say it again and again, this usually isn't what really happens. And even when men describe it this way, this isn't really what usually happens. But in the case that happens, then it's a very difficult thing to stand before. That's what he's saying. And we won't say that you can't be a witness. That's what the Tosfot say. By the way, they're only saying this to explain these svarot. There are also svarot, there are also different opinions. But to understand Rav Nachman's opinion, they're using this svara. I'm saying this because Rav Kook is only using this as an example. He's not really saying what he thinks about the sugya, okay? We took a certain angle of the sugya just to explain that sometimes you might do something out of your own free will, and yet we'll say it's as if you were coerced. That's the whole, that's all we've been trying to say for the past 20-25 minutes. So that's what the Tosfot say, and Rav Kook says that the current of time, it's like those situations, meaning your children and the other children who strayed away from Torah and mitzvot and Yirat Shamayim, they're not to blame for it. It's like honest, and you can't use all the rough halachot, speaking about somebody who did something totally out of his free will, you can't use them in this situation, because the situation is different. It's a different time. It's not the Torah that's changed, but it's reality that has changed. There's a very, very strong current, and it's taking our younger people in the beginning of the 20th century, at least, in a very specific direction. And it's not surprising if your children are part of that current. You shouldn't have harsh feelings about them. It doesn't mean that you should accept it. Okay? It doesn't mean that you should say it's okay. It definitely doesn't mean that you should join them and also stray away. Okay? We see that the sorrow and the pain and all these igrot are based on the will to bring them back, and if not them, then the generations after them. Okay? All we're saying is don't judge them so harshly. That's the idea of this igeret. And he'll deepen our understanding of this in the next part of the igeret, which we will learn in our next shiur. Thank you very much for being with me on this.